Dear portal people who are on the other side, please write us, where are you, from which city you are watching us. And in 1 minute, you will have a chance to hear about diversity of Larp cultures. Survey. It was a research conducted by Ilina Konakchieva, who is well known for most of our community for organizing folk Larp in Bulgaria. But not many people know that she also is an expert in political science and a social researcher. Bravo for our speaker.
Shall I start or shall I wait 1 minute, as you said? Shall I start or shall I wait 1 minute, as you said? Okay. So, there's been a survey, and as we know, surveys involve questions mostly. So I will start with questions again. First question is, who am I? Patti already made a presentation. I am not going to trouble you with my family name again, which is almost as difficult as Polish surnames. I'm proud of that. And yeah, I'm a Larper for 14 years, Larp organizer for 12 years, producer of the folk Larp, and also in my free time, I'm a social scientist with a background in social survey and political science. Enough of that. Why am I here? We made a survey, as I said. And my objectives with this presentation is to tell you everything about this survey, also to show you some fancy charts. I made the last one this morning. And also to sabotage the next panel, which is going to be here, I believe, and it's going to be a discussion on diversity of Larp cultures. They are very diverse, indeed. So what is the context of this survey? The last presentation here was one of Alexiu there, and when I entered, he was speaking about Balkan Larp. There was a heated discussion on Facebook in which he mentioned Balkan Larp, and my personal reaction to that was, what the fuck is Balkan Larp? There is no such term. We don't know what is that. And many people in the survey said the same thing. So we don't know yet what is Balkan Larp. Maybe we're going to have some better idea after Alexiu's presentation and after we hear what the Larpers think about it. So the idea of the survey, the initial idea of the survey was to establish and find out what Balkan Larp was, but as it is not very efficient to conduct an entire survey just about the Balkans, because who cares about the Balkans anyway, so we made it into something bigger, also to serve the purpose of this portal, and we decided to see what people think about Larp culture in general. And do they believe it is diverse or that it is not diverse or whatever? And we created a team with Patricia here and with Marcin Slowikowski. And I was responsible for the collection of information from the Larpers in this survey. So the objective of the survey was to make a pilot study to describe the diversity of Larp cultures. I'm going to tell you why is it pilot now, I think. The topic of the survey. This is an object which yes. This is an object which could be defined as pink buffer sort. I made this definition up without consulting my team and without asking the respondents in the survey if they agree or not. So this is a pink buffer sort, and the objective of the survey might be summarized as getting the opinion of the Larpers around the world of, does it have a purpose in their respective Larps? This object, I mean. Is it safe? It's pink, so it's supposed to be safe. Is it aesthetically pleasing? What kind of people would use this sort, and what do we think about them? And should it exist at all? So let's get more serious just for a minute, because there are going to be a lot of funny things later. So usually we refer, when we refer to culture, we mean the values, beliefs, behavior, and material objects, you know, like the sort, that together form a way of life, of a society, of a group of people. Therefore, we can regard that Larp culture as the perspective on the pink wafer sort of the Larpers, or the perception and interpretation of what is Larp and how is it done. So this is the differences in their views that we're going to talk about after asking them. Culture is a group thing. We cannot speak of culture on individual level. Because people are hardwired to form groups, different kinds of groups. Groups form collective identities, which sometimes is a problem. And in the context of Larp culture, we deal with group perceptions, not with individual perceptions. As in the way, perception, as in the way in which Larp things are regarded, understood, or interpreted, and stereotypes. Stereotypes are not necessarily something bad. Stereotypes are an instrument to think, because we cannot think of all things individually. We need to generalize to some extent to be able to produce any thought about anything. So stereotypes, here we mean as in generalized beliefs about Larp things. The conclusion of this entire theory slide is that in the context of Larp culture, we do not deal with diversity of individuals, but with diversity of groups. And I will tell you what I mean in the context of the survey. So the specific topics of the survey on which we have formulated questions and asked the people to answer them are several, among which game content, what specific activities are typical or not typical for the Larp in the respective country, style of play, meaning what is the dominant style of play in different cultures, their group identity, some main characteristics of it, and view on others. What stereotypes do groups have on each other, on themselves, and other groups? I need to talk also about methodology of this survey. It has been made through an online questionnaire, of course, because there is no other way it could be made. And online questionnaires lead to absolute lack of representability. So the survey is in no way representative, and we cannot take the results as representative of the Larpers of the world, or the Larpers in Europe, or the Larpers anywhere. They only represent the views of the Larpers who participated in the survey. But this is okay, it is acceptable, because we can use these results as a qualitative, in a qualitative way to form hypotheses and use it for further research and make new conclusions after that. It has a biased sample, which is a direct result of the questionnaire being online, which means that there is no, the participants come from different countries, but these countries are not presented the way that the population of Larpers, so to say, is presented there. Also, we cannot make a representative survey. This is a typical methodological problem, because we don't even know how many Larpers are where. There was a Larp census. Anyone maybe knows? Does anyone know anything about it? It was back in the, yeah. It was maybe a third round of it, because I remember it from earlier, but it is also not representative, because it only includes the people who voluntarily went and filled the questionnaire there, and also maybe many of the Larpers did not hear at all that such survey existed, which is the case, I think, at least in Bulgaria, for example. So whatever I say as a result of this survey needs to be used with caution. We have 119 total respondents in the survey, which is a good number, but still is not enough, but we work with what we have. These respondents are distributed irregularly by nationality, and they're mostly overqualified. What I mean, this is not a survey in which general plain Larpers, which form the mass group of Larpers in a country, participate. We can see that because 74% of them are LARP writers, creators, or producers, or organizers in some way. 27 of them regularly attend LARP conference. This is not a typical LARPer. And also they're old. This is not the average age of the LARPers around the world. They are 32 years old and have been LARPing for 10 years on average, which make them, however, experts. And this is good because we can count on their answers to be competent. But again, they are not representative. With this 119 respondents, I had to do something, because if I just give you the distribution of answers, it means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. So we need to group them. This is a reminder. The survey is dealing with group perceptions and stereotypes, and depending on how I form the groups, I can get you completely different results and achieve whatever results I want to. This is how manipulation is done by surveys usually. One of the ways, there are many of them. Grouping had to make an objective grouping, because I don't want to manipulate you right now. There is no profit in me in this right now. I had to do a grouping which would neutralize as much as possible the effect of the sample flows. For example, what I mean by sample flows, we have too many respondents from Poland and Bulgaria, because we were most active. So if I group Poland and Bulgaria together, this would weigh too much, and the results would be meaningless. Also, the grouping has to make sense in the context of the survey objectives. For example, it makes no sense to group American LARPers with, let's say, I don't know, Greek LARPers. And also groups need to be significant. Significant in statistics and sociology means that they have to include enough cases. Less than 30 respondents cannot be processed statistically without the results being absolutely not reliable. So this is how I grouped the respondents. I formed 3 groups that would be significant. Western LARPers, 37 respondents, Eastern LARPers, 41 respondents, and Balkan LARPers, 31 respondents. The groups are more or less equal, and I ditched the 2 American LARPers, one Canadian LARPer, and 2 LARPers from New Zealand, because I had no idea what to do with them. I'm sorry if someone is watching from there. So results finally. I'm sorry for the long introduction, but I have this bad experience with surveys that someone is giving some results and people have absolutely no clue what to do with them. So these are not all the results of the survey, because it's a huge thing. There is a lot of information. It needs to be processed months, and probably I will write an article, and you will give me a doctor's degree. I'm going to be a PhD in LARP or whatever. So, the several main findings are related to the following topics. First of which is motivation to play. This is motivation on individual level, though. However, we can find clear distinctions between Western Europe LARPers, Eastern Europe LARPers, and Balkan LARPers. This is only Western LARPers to give you idea of the answers, because the next chart is going to be more complicated. So mostly people play to create stories. Someone said yesterday that LARP was not about creating stories, but that is not what LARPers think, obviously. They play to create stories and do other things, such as playing a character, immersing in the LARP world, which is also connected to creating stories. And now this is the real chart. From now on, Western Europe is in blue, Eastern Europe is green, and the Balkans are red, because we are aggressive in the Balkans. So you can see a very clear distinction. Maybe you cannot see, but now you will. Okay, so the top 3 items of motivation for playing. Creating stories is everywhere. the first top one in Western Europe and a little bit lower, but still present everywhere. Playing a character, interacting with other people is the top 3 motivation of Western European LARPers. In Eastern Europe, being a part of the community, very clearly first place. Experiencing emotions, creating stories, and entertainment. And in the Balkan, personal development. Creating stories, entertainment and immersion, and interacting with other people. There are more here because they have the same percentage. That's why we have more items here than on the other categories. What are the major differences? At the Balkans, people want to be physically active. They want to be outdoors and they want to be challenged. Unlike, for example, you can see on physical activity, I think the West needs to do something about it. It's not healthy. And Eastern Europe as well, even worse. So please, guys, start running or something. Outdoors is something very Balkans too. At the Balkans, we don't play a lot indoors. We don't play a lot indoors for some reason. So this was about motivation. Typical activities. These are typical activities used by game designers when they create a LARP. Everything, battle LARPs are a thing, obviously. Fighting with weapon replicas is a universal thing to do at LARP. However, this is the fog LARP. This is clearly a fog LARP influence because fog LARP is the only LARP that has actual tactical war game, and this is something borrowed from military simulation games and airsoft. Like in the concept of Slovak about the bridal concept. This is our borrowed thing. So this is why we have here this peak of tactical war game, and we can see then in the West they like solving mysteries, and in the East they like plotting and intrigues. I don't know why. Negotiating is a thing everywhere. Major differences again. Solving mysteries is a thing in the West, not that much in the Balkans, which was a big difference. Building relations, deepening characters is not a thing on the Balkans. Obviously. And in Eastern Europe, they don't like solving puzzles. So no physical movement and no puzzles if you do a LARP in Poland. And again, tactical war game is only a thing on the Balkans. Sorry? Okay. Okay, next highlight was a question about what emotions do you think that LARPers feel during LARP. Remember, we are asking the respondents to say not about themselves, but about the LARPers in their culture. So it is their assessment as experts on this culture. This is not their assessment of their individual emotions. Most often experienced emotions in LARP, everywhere, the most often felt, the emotion that is most often felt is excitement, which is normal, logical, nothing strange here. But for some reason, this is something very interesting for me, if you have any idea why is that, people from Western Europe and Eastern Europe, not that much, they like to be sad. We in the Balkans don't like that. I think George here had a presentation about 3 years ago at the Porto again, where he explains this phenomenon with biochemistry. Because we're so miserable in our everyday life, the hormones we produce make us want to fight, to be more aggressive in Larp. That's why we like physical activities and war game and stuff like that. And people from the West, they lack being sad. They want to be sad, that's why they make sad Larps. Do you agree with this? Okay. Okay. Also we're angry. Yes. Sangry is a new term. Yeah, everything is excited, which is, I think we can all agree that this is good. Now, style of play, in this case, means we wanted to go into competitive versus collaborative style of play, not style of play in general. And what we see here. Do you have any questions on this chart? This thing is very interesting too. It is very easy to, according to my opinion, it would be very easy, to my initial opinion, it would be very easy to answer this question. But a huge amount of people, especially from Eastern Europe, they answered, I do not find this question relevant. Meaning that they don't get the sense of the question. Do you guys from Poland have any ideas why is that? So it's more kind of individualistic. Yeah. Unlike the West, where they are collaborative because it is good to be collaborative and inclusive and stuff like that. Okay, yeah. Thank you. I wanted an idea because it was strange to me and I didn't find any explanation. Alexiou.
Perhaps it's more difficult for Eastern type LARPs to define what collaboration and competitiveness means in the frame of the games that are played, because they may not be polar, and throughout the game you may be having both things intertwining.
So we fight with the West and the East is in the middle.
I'm also wondering if there's a difference between the players being competitive or collaborative and the characters being competitive or collaborative. So I've played a lot of like Western games in which all of the characters are at each other's throats, but the play is very collaborative. People come out and say, okay, do you want to win or should I win this one? You know, everybody's working together to create that kind of cutthroat game. I've been in other places where ostensibly everyone was collaborative, but people were very reluctant to share information. People didn't want to go off game and discuss things. So there ended up being kind of a competitive element to it, despite the fact that all the characters were ostensibly working together. And I think that's a distinction that's often kind of...
Yeah, this is a distinction that the question did not capture. I agree, you have a good point, a valid point. But still we have this difference in the interpretation of the Western respondents and the Eastern respondents. So this was what was interesting to me. Why is that? And maybe we could research it further. Next, we go to stereotypes. This is maybe the most interesting. These are the fanciest charts. Almost. On the next one, not this one. So, I will go to the chart a little bit later. I want to explain you something about the questions we asked. The respondents were asked to define their respective national Larps, then Nordic Larps, which we suppose everybody knows what it is, then American Larps, whatever it is, and then Balkan Larps, whatever it is, to find out the differences in their definitions. This is a typical way of, this is a game of associations. So we used a set of adjectives going from one spectrum to other and grouped them to get this chart. So as you can see, blue line is Western, green is Eastern, red is Balkan again. Every group out of the three believe that Nordic Larps are in the spectrum of, you can see, serious, grim, heavy, deep, insightful, meaningful, immersive, and pathetic. You agree with that, yes? I guess. For some reason, there are Balkan people who believe that Nordic Larps are violent. But what we can see here is that we have a consensus. The reason for this consensus is that Nordic Larp is a well-established term. Everybody knows what it is, or at least has a vague idea. Also, the fact that these lines go to the end of the circle means that most of the people have responded to the question, which is not the same here, for example, with the American Larps. Yes, this is the only thing that people know in general is that they're competitive, playful, and aggressive. But more competitive and playful and cheerful. However, most of the people, less amount of respondents answered the question because they did not know what to say, because they don't know what American Larp is. They even wrote on several occasions, why are you asking these things? Don't you know that such things doesn't exist? They were very aggressive in trying to accuse us that we don't know anything about the stuff, and we're asking them.
American Larp doesn't exist.
Yes.
We'll discuss it later.
Also, there were people who were trying to say to us, to inform us kindly, that American Larp could not exist because there are a lot of Larps in America and they're all different. So we don't have the right to ask such kind of questions and to generalize like that. Two, yeah. So yeah, the stereotype about the Nordic Larps we have seen, and it is very close to the actual thing. And this is the stereotype of American Larp: competitive, playful, cheerful. I don't know. I don't know if this is true or not. I have no idea. And now Balkan Larp. So people from Western Europe and Eastern Europe have no idea what we're talking about, and people from Balkans are all over the place. I don't know what to say. Okay. So, main conclusions. Let's sum this up. Things in common. People everywhere play to create stories. They play for excitement, and battle Larps are the main thing, the main mass product in existence everywhere. I don't know if this is good or bad, but this is a fact. It is what it is. Main differences. I would say, with my own words, based on this result, that people in the West play to interact. I mean West Europe, not America. I don't know about America. People in the East play for emotion, and people in the Balkans play for ambition. Alexiu, do you agree with this based on the presentation that you made a few minutes ago? Do you have any comment?
I think most of my assessments fall in order with what was described throughout the surveys, and
I think you answered the survey, so it's something's rigged here.
I did, but you know, I'm one person. And the only thing I believe I didn't make a clear distinction of was Western and Eastern Nordic style cultures. So I didn't expect them to be diverse within themselves, and this is an insight on getting to know more about this, because I've mostly participated in LARPs in Sweden and Poland, and not really in, you know, Belgium or the Netherlands or Germany, and you know, the more German-speaking countries. So I believe that is something to look to and to kind of make assessments of.
Okay, thank you. That's my opinion as well. Then something else. Communities are more of a thing the more we go to the east, reaching the point of tribalism on the Balkans. There was a question. I did not give you the results on it because the presentation was already becoming too big with too much data. But there was a question about existence of out-of-game clubs that are stable and exist for a long time and have the same members over the years. And this was found absolutely irrelevant by the Western LARPers, and it is, I think, in the Balkans. And in the East, the respondents are more like, you know, some kind of fluent. They change groups depending on the LARP, on the setting, on the location, etc., etc. And in the West it is irrelevant, in the East they are fluent, and in the Balkans there are stable, tribalish groups, which makes a difference as well. Then game content, mysteries, plotting in this war game on the Balkans, emotions, the differences between sadness in Europe and anger on the Balkans. This relates with history as well, I think. And yes, sorry?
Can I have a question about group homogeneity? Is it on basically the same level across those three developed groups, or is the Eastern different? My question is based on that Polish LARP culture seems to be right now very much divided into two distinct areas. One is more Balkan, one is more Nordic, in my perspective. Do the results show it?
No, because we don't have any question that defines which region of a country a respondent comes from.
It's not a regional
I can check that. Yeah, I think what we must do is to try and collect more answers, because now it wouldn't make sense. I have 23 Polish people. If I divide them into subgroups, the results are not going to be statistically valid, because I cannot analyze a group of 10 people statistically. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
For communities that you mentioned between the Western and the East of the Balkans, I remember when Berliner Vampire LARPers came to Greece and played Vampire, went back, the thing they brought with them was that after the LARP we go for drinks together and to eat together, and they didn't do that at all. The community part from after the LARP, which we took for granted always in our games. We play, then we go out, then we talk, then we hang out.
Yeah, this is a common thing, but for example, in Bulgaria, I'm not going to go into this too much because we don't have time and it is another question, but in Bulgaria we have stable clubs of LARPers that exist out of game. They prepare for different LARPs in completely different settings together, and they do everything together. And they have these tribal features we discussed with the guys before.
I have one more question. Actually, this is in relationships to the question before this one about different styles of play present within each country. So, for example, also in Croatia, you have very, very different groups with different play styles. However, for the purposes of this survey itself, there is a bias to which groups actually decided to answer the survey. Did you
I think you
account
came
for
a little bit later, and this is the first thing I started with. This sample is completely biased. This is not representative of any group. This is I treat this as a survey among random experts, because most of them are organizers and writers. This is not the general Larper.
And
Also.
there is one more thing that actually brings everyone who responded together. Most of them are a part of the portal community or wider portal community.
Yes, which makes them experts.
Thank you. The question is about, is there some difference between declared positions that all LARPers in my country play in competitive or play to lose, and what they play, their responses play themselves? That, for example, I am play to lose, but I think everyone around me play to win.
The questions were formulated in a way that should make the respondents know that we're asking about the groups in their countries in general. We're asking them to generalize which is correspondent to their status as experts, because as LARP organizers in their respective countries, they should know. Of course, sometimes respondents are stupid, which is an everyday problem in my work, and maybe some of them did not get it. But looking at the results of the survey as a whole, I think they got it. So I believe that these results are informative on the style of play in their respective country.
The main question was to LARP organizers, yes? Not for players.
The question was to everyone who would answer who would respond to the survey. But we have a question, are you a player, organizer, etc., etc., and 74% of them are, apart from players, because we don't have organizers who are not players, we have 4 actually in the entire survey, but yeah, they are organizers.
I think to examine the differences in cultures, it could be interesting to also ask in the same region, like Eastern, Western Balkans or whatever, to ask both citizens and immigrants and compare their attitudes, because immigrants may see it a bit differently, like
yes.
if they know their culture, and we'll see how it works here.
I completely agree, and I think that we should include this distinction when we continue collecting answers and create a bigger pool of respondents to analyze further. So, yeah, could you remind me, because I will forget, Patti, to ask if they're immigrants or natives to the country. I think we discussed that in terms that there are people who are not immigrants, just living in another country, and they would have difficulty answering the question about what is your, for example, national culture. And something to finish, I have 2 things before I finish. The first one is intended to trigger you all. We had a question, I insisted to have it in the survey, and it was one of the last questions going, how would you define your political attitude or affiliation? It was an open question to allow people to answer freely, but after summarizing the answers, LARPers are communist. This was the more joking way of saying it, but yes, 54% of the respondents in this poll define themselves as some level of leftist, going from my favorite non-stupid left to the communist, anarchist, and stuff like that. There is a significant group of about 20% who are apolitical or don't care or whatever, and only 10% are some level of right-wing or libertarian, and all of them are from the Balkans. Alexiu.
However, it is important to note that these are the LARP organizers. So it can be said that people that believe in more leftist approaches are people who are organizing large communities of people that believe work together. Okay? So
Okay, yes. I-
it's not players that are leftist, it's organizers that are leftist and that are given to a community.
Yes, yes, thank you. You're correct. I phrase it not correctly, but it sounded cooler. Someone else raised a hand? Okay. So this was to 74% of 119 people, which is almost 75 for organizers. I can cross-check that very easily, but we don't need to because there are the number of respondents is very low. It makes no sense. So this is when you have this lack of representability and low number of cases, you can only form hypotheses that are subject to further research when you have the opportunity to get more respondents. Okay, and to finish up, something to cheer you up, in the movies there are bloopers in the end of the movies. I always collect bloopers when I make a survey, especially from the open questions, so I have taken you some of the best answers to the question, to the open questions. What do you think people do at a Nordic LARP, American LARP, and Balkan LARP? Where are they? I can't. If you remember some, you can say. So, what do you think they do at the Nordic Lab? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if the last one. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if the last one is for serious or a joke. I cannot say. So. Okay, next one is American LARP. Yeah, these are stereotypes indeed. And now our new category that emerged from this portal is Balkan LARP. If Russia comes to the Balkans, I'm gonna play music for real. Okay, I think my time is up. Thank you very much for your attention.